Zara pressed her tiny hands against the cold metal walls of the transport ship, watching through the small porthole as Earth grew larger in the distance. At 4 feet tall, she barely reached the viewing window even when standing on her tiptoes. Around her, the other members of her diplomatic mission moved with confidence and purpose, their average 7-foot frames making the cramped corridors seem even smaller than they already were. "Still staring at that primitive planet?" asked Commander Vex, her voice carrying the usual note of disapproval she reserved for Zara. The tall, silver-skinned woman towered over Zara like a mountain over a pebble. "You should be reviewing the cultural protocols instead of daydreaming." Zara quickly stepped back from the window, her violet skin deepening to a darker shade, a telltale sign of embarrassment among her people, the Kithara. "I was just observing, Commander, trying to understand what makes humans so different." "Different is an understatement," snorted Lieutenant Khan, another towering figure who seemed to take particular pleasure in reminding Zara of her shortcomings. "They're barely civilized, fighting among themselves, destroying their environment, and somehow they've managed to catch the attention of the Galactic Council. It's absurd." But Zara had read the reports differently. Yes, humans were chaotic and unpredictable, but they possessed something her own people had lost long ago: passion. Where the Cathara approached everything with cold logic and measured responses, humans threw themselves into life with reckless abandon. They created art that moved souls, fought for causes they believed in, and loved with an intensity that defied reason. The Council wouldn't have approved this diplomatic mission if humans weren't worth understanding, Zara said quietly, though she immediately regretted speaking up when she saw the amused smirks on her colleagues' faces. "Spoken like someone who's never been chosen for anything important," Vex replied coldly. "This mission is about establishing trade routes and resource extraction agreements. Nothing more romantic than that, little Zara." The cruel emphasis on little hit its mark. Zara had been called many things throughout her life: runt, genetic anomaly, the accident, but little somehow hurt the most because it reduced her entire existence to a single disappointing fact. Among the Kithara, physical stature was directly linked to social standing and perceived capability. At 4 feet tall in a society where the average height was 7 feet, Zara was considered fundamentally defective. She had grown up in the shadow of her towering parents, both respected scientists who had produced what they saw as their greatest failure. While other Kithara children were being groomed for leadership roles and important positions, Zara was shuffled into support functions and clerical work. She had excelled academically, mastering 7 alien languages and earning advanced degrees in xenobiology and cultural anthropology. But none of that mattered when she couldn't reach the high shelves in the archives or command respect in a room full of her peers. The only reason she was on this mission at all was because of her language skills. When the human first contact situation had developed, the Kithara had desperately needed someone who could quickly learn and translate human languages. Zara's linguistic abilities had made her indispensable, but she knew that once translation protocols were established, she would be discarded once again. "Approaching Earth's outer defense perimeter," announced the ship's pilot over the communication system. "Prepare for human contact in approximately 6 hours." Zara felt a flutter of nervous excitement in her chest. Despite everything, she was genuinely curious about these humans. The preliminary data suggested they were a remarkably diverse species, not just physically but culturally as well. Unlike the rigid uniformity of Kithara society, humans seemed to celebrate their differences rather than suppress them. She had studied their entertainment media, their literature, and their historical records with fascination. Humans told stories about underdogs overcoming impossible odds, about individuals who changed the world despite being dismissed by others, about love transcending all barriers. It was the kind of idealistic thinking that would be mocked on Kithara Prime, but Zara found it beautiful. You're doing it again, Vex's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. That dreamy look in your eyes. This isn't one of your romantic human stories, Zara. This is real life, and real life has rules. The humans need to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy, and we need to establish our authority from the beginning. What if they don't respond well to authority? Zara asked, genuinely curious. The psychological profiles suggest humans have a strong resistance to being dominated. Then we'll have to be more persuasive, Lieutenant Khan said with a cold smile. They're primitives with primitive weapons. If they can't be reasoned with, they can be subdued. The casual talk of violence made Zara's stomach twist. She had read about human history, yes, and she knew they were capable of terrible things when threatened. But she had also read their poetry, their music, their stories of redemption and hope. They seemed to be a species in constant conflict with themselves, capable of both great cruelty and incredible kindness. As the ship drew closer to Earth, Zara could make out the continents and oceans that she had studied in such detail. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were going about their daily lives, unaware that their first official contact with an alien civilization was about to change everything. Some would greet the Cathara with wonder, others with fear, and still others with hostility. But all of them would be seeing something unprecedented in their history. Final approach beginning, the pilot announced. Human vessels detected on intercept course. They appear to be welcoming. Through the porthole, Zara could see the small fleet of human ships approaching. They looked so different from Cathara vessels, less elegant perhaps, but there was something endearing about their functional, sturdy design. These weren't ships built for intimidation or displays of power. They were tools created by people who valued substance over style. Remember your roles, Commander Vex addressed the team as they prepared for landing. We are the superior civilization here. We have technology they can only dream of, lifespans they can barely comprehend, and knowledge accumulated over millennia. Do not let their primitive enthusiasm fool you into thinking we are equals. But as Zara looked down at the approaching planet, she couldn't help but wonder if the commander had it backwards. Yes, the Cathara were technologically advanced and long-lived, but what had they done with all that time and knowledge? They had built a cold, rigid society where worth was measured by height and conformity. They had eliminated passion in favor of logic, creativity in favor of efficiency, and love in favor of genetic compatibility matrices. The humans, with their short lives and primitive technology, had somehow managed to create something the Cathara had lost: hope. They believed in possibilities, in change, in the idea that tomorrow could be better than today. They wrote songs about love conquering all and told stories about small individuals making big differences. As the transport ship settled onto the landing platform that humans had specially constructed for their arrival, Zara caught her first glimpse of the welcoming committee. There were dozens of them, all shapes and sizes, their faces bright with curiosity and excitement. Some were tall, others short, some broad, others thin. Unlike Cathara society, where physical uniformity was prized, the humans seemed to celebrate their variety. And then she saw him. Standing slightly apart from the main group was a human male of average height for his species, probably around 6 feet tall, which made him a giant by Zara's standards, but practically a dwarf compared to her Cathara colleagues. He had dark hair that looked like he had forgotten to comb it, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and clothes that suggested he was more comfortable in a laboratory than at diplomatic functions. But what caught Zara's attention wasn't his appearance. It was the way he was looking at their ship. While the other humans stared with the expected mixture of awe and nervousness, his expression was one of pure wonder. He looked like a child seeing magic for the first time, completely unguarded in his amazement. Pathetic, muttered Lieutenant Khan as he observed the human welcoming committee. Look how small and fragile they are. This will be easier than we thought. but Zara found herself thinking the opposite. There was something beautiful about the humans' openness, their willingness to greet the unknown with curiosity rather than suspicion. When was the last time any Kithara had looked at anything with such genuine wonder? "Prepare for first contact," Commander Vex announced as the ship's doors began to open. "Remember, we set the tone for all future human-Kithara relations today. Make it clear that we are the dominant species in this relationship." As they prepared to disembark, Zara felt a strange mixture of excitement and dread. She was about to step onto an alien world for the first time in her life, about to meet a species that had captured her imagination for months. But she was also acutely aware that she would be the smallest person in any gathering that included both humans and Kithara, a living symbol of inadequacy among two species of giants. The ramp extended toward the platform, and the first formal meeting between humans and Kithara was about to begin. Zara took a deep breath and prepared to play her role as the invisible translator, the necessary but unimportant facilitator of more important people's conversations. She had no way of knowing that within hours, everything she believed about herself, about her people, and about the possibility of finding acceptance in a universe that had always seen her as too small to matter, was about to change forever. The human with the kind eyes and messy hair was about to teach her that sometimes the biggest hearts come in the smallest packages and that love truly could transcend any barrier, even the one she had built around her own heart. Dr. Marcus Chen had been studying xenobiology for most of his adult life, but nothing could have prepared him for the moment when the Kithara delegation stepped off their ship. The three aliens were impossibly tall and elegant, their silver skin gleaming in the afternoon sunlight like living metal. Commander Vex and Lieutenant Khan moved with the fluid grace of dancers, their elongated limbs and regal bearing making them seem almost divine. But it was the smallest member of their party who captured Marcus's attention completely. While her companions stood nearly 7 feet tall, the third Kithara barely reached 4 feet in height. Her skin was a beautiful violet color rather than silver, and where the others moved with calculated precision, she seemed to carry herself with a mixture of dignity and self-consciousness that Marcus found instantly endearing. She stayed slightly behind the other two, carrying what appeared to be translation equipment, clearly in a support role despite being obviously intelligent and alert. "Welcome to Earth," said Secretary General Harrison, stepping forward to greet the aliens with the carefully rehearsed words that had been practiced dozens of times. "We are honored by your presence and look forward to establishing peaceful relations between our species." Commander Vex replied in what Marcus assumed was the Kithara language, a series of melodic tones that sounded almost like singing. The small, violet alien immediately began translating, her voice soft but clear. "Commander Vex expresses her satisfaction at your species' willingness to acknowledge Kithara superiority and looks forward to establishing appropriate trade relationships." Marcus frowned. That wasn't exactly what the Secretary General had said, and judging by the slight tension in the small alien's posture, she was aware of the discrepancy. But she had faithfully translated the commander's actual words rather than softening them diplomatically. The formal ceremonies continued for nearly an hour, with speeches and presentations that Marcus found increasingly frustrating. The two tall Kithara spoke with casual arrogance about human limitations and primitive technology, while the human dignitaries tried to maintain diplomatic smiles. Throughout it all, the small Kithara translator worked tirelessly, her attention split between the complex linguistic challenges and her obvious discomfort with her companions' attitudes. When the formal proceedings finally concluded and the groups began to mingle more casually, Marcus saw his opportunity. While Commander Vex and Lieutenant Khan were surrounded by government officials and military leaders, the small translator stood alone near the refreshment table, looking lost and uncertain. Marcus approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me," he said gently. I wanted to thank you for your translation work today. That couldn't have been easy. The alien looked up at him with wide, expressive eyes that were a deeper violet than her skin. For a moment, she seemed surprised that anyone was speaking to her directly rather than through her as a conduit for someone else's words. "It is my function," she replied formally, but Marcus caught a hint of weariness in her voice. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen," he said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture he hoped wouldn't be considered rude. "I'm a xenobiologist, which means I study alien life forms. Though I suppose from your perspective, I'm the alien life form." To his delight, the corner of her mouth curved upward in what might have been a smile. "I am Zara," she said, carefully reaching out to shake his hand with her much smaller one. "And yes, the irony is not lost on me. We are all aliens to each other today." Her hand was warm and surprisingly strong, with long, delicate fingers that reminded Marcus of a pianist's. The simple contact sent an unexpected jolt through him, not just because he was touching an alien for the first time, but because there was something genuinely sweet about her careful, gentle grip. "Would you like to sit down?" Marcus gestured toward a nearby bench. "You've been standing and translating for hours. That must be exhausting." Zara glanced nervously toward her companions, who were still engaged in intense discussions with human officials. "I should remain available in case I am needed," she said hesitantly. "They seem pretty occupied," Marcus observed. "And you deserve a break. Besides, I'd love to hear about your world from someone who isn't trying to negotiate a trade agreement." After a moment's consideration, Zara nodded and followed him to the bench. Marcus was careful to sit at a level that wouldn't emphasize their height difference, though he couldn't help but notice how she seemed to make herself even smaller, as if trying to take up as little space as possible. "So," Marcus said, trying to find a comfortable starting point for conversation with someone from another planet, "what do you think of Earth so far?" Zara's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "It's remarkable," she said, her formal tone giving way to something more natural and animated. "Your sky has such beautiful colors. We have no equivalent to your blue atmosphere on Cathara Prime. And the diversity of life forms is extraordinary. I've been monitoring your communications during our approach, and the variety of languages, cultures, and individual expressions is unlike anything I've encountered." Marcus found himself smiling at her obvious excitement. "You've been studying our languages?" "7 of them so far," Zara admitted, then quickly looked down as if embarrassed by the admission. "I have a talent for linguistic absorption. It's the only reason I was included in this mission." There was something sad in the way she said "only reason," and Marcus felt a pang of recognition. He had spent most of his academic career feeling like an outsider, too focused on his research to fit in with normal social circles, too idealistic for the cutthroat world of scientific politics. "7 languages?" Marcus said with genuine admiration. "That's incredible. I struggle with English, and it's my native tongue." Zara looked up at him with surprise, as if she wasn't used to receiving compliments. "It's not really that impressive. Cathara neural architecture is well suited for pattern recognition and linguistic analysis." "Don't do that," Marcus said gently. "Do what?" "Diminish your accomplishments. 7 languages is amazing regardless of neural architecture. I bet there are things you understand about human communication that we don't even understand about ourselves." For the first time since he had met her, Zara straightened up instead of trying to make herself smaller. "Actually," she said, gaining confidence, "there are some fascinating aspects of human linguistic evolution that suggest your species values emotional expression over pure information transfer. Your poetry, for instance, often conveys meaning through metaphor and rhythm rather than literal content." "You've read our poetry?" Marcus asked, delighted. "Extensively," Zara admitted, her violet skin deepening slightly in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as a blush. "Shakespeare, Emily Dickinson, Pablo Neruda." "Rumi, They're also different from Kithara literature, which focuses primarily on technical accuracy and logical progression. Which do you prefer? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. I probably shouldn't say, Zara said, glancing again toward her companions. Why not? Because preferring human emotional expression over Kithara logical expression would be considered another sign of my inadequacy. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Inadequacy? Who told you that you were inadequate? Zara gestured vaguely toward her own small frame. It's obvious, isn't it? Among my people, physical stature correlates with social value and cognitive capability. I'm a genetic anomaly. Too small to be taken seriously, too different to fit in. Marcus felt a surge of anger on her behalf. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, he said bluntly, then immediately softened his tone when he saw her startled expression. I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult your culture, but judging someone's worth based on their height is completely arbitrary. Some of the greatest humans in history have been small in stature. Really? Zara asked, and Marcus could hear genuine curiosity rather than polite skepticism in her voice. Absolutely. Some of our most brilliant scientists, artists, and leaders have been well under average height. We have a saying, good things come in small packages. It means that size has nothing to do with value or capability. Zara was quiet for a long moment processing this information. On Kithara Prime, we have a saying too. The smallest branch breaks first in the storm. It means that physical weakness leads to inevitable failure. Well, Marcus said thoughtfully, maybe your people haven't been looking at it the right way. Small branches are flexible. They bend without breaking, and sometimes the mightiest tree falls while the small one survives. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the main group. Commander Vex was speaking in rapid, agitated Kithara while gesturing dismissively at a group of human children who had gathered at the edge of the reception area, hoping to catch a glimpse of the aliens. What's wrong? Marcus asked. Zara listened for a moment, then sighed. The commander is displeased by the presence of human offspring at a diplomatic function. She considers it unprofessional and primitive. Marcus looked at the children, about a dozen kids ranging in age from 5 to 12, all staring with wide-eyed wonder at the visiting aliens. Their faces were bright with curiosity and excitement, and several were waving enthusiastically despite their parents' attempts to keep them quiet. They're just curious, Marcus said. It's probably the most exciting thing that's ever happened to them. Zara watched the children with obvious fascination. Kithara children are never allowed at formal functions. They're kept in educational facilities until they reach the age of cognitive maturity. How old is that? Approximately 35 of your years, Marcus nearly choked. 35? But that means you spend your entire childhood and young adulthood in school? It's considered the most efficient way to develop proper social and intellectual capabilities, Zara explained. But there was something wistful in her voice. Children are too unpredictable and emotional for important functions. As they watched, one of the human children, a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6, broke away from her parents and ran directly toward the Kithara delegation. Security moved to intercept her, but she was too quick and too small to catch easily. Commander Vex stepped back in obvious disgust as the child approached, but the little girl ignored the tall aliens entirely. Instead, she ran straight to Zara, stopping just in front of the bench where she sat with Marcus. "You're so pretty," the child announced with the complete lack of filter that only small children possess. "I love your purple skin. Are you a princess?" Zara stared at the child in complete shock. No one had ever called her pretty before, and certainly no one had ever suggested she might be royalty. On Kithara Prime, children were taught from birth to recognize and defer to their genetic superiors. I am not a princess, Zara managed to say. Well, you look like one, the little girl insisted. You're all sparkly and magical looking. Can I touch your hand? Before Zara could respond, the child reached out and gently took Zara's hand in her own tiny one. Wow, your skin is so soft and warm. I thought aliens might be cold and slimy. Marcus watched Zara's expression transform as the little girl continued her innocent chatter. The alien's eyes filled with something he had never seen from her before: pure joy. For the first time since he had met her, Zara was interacting with someone who saw her as special rather than deficient, someone who looked at her with admiration rather than disappointment. "What's your name?" the child asked. "Zara," she replied, her voice soft with wonder. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Emma. Are you going to live here now? I hope you do. We could be friends." By this time, Emma's frantic parents had caught up with their escaped daughter, full of apologies for the diplomatic incident she had caused. Commander Vex was clearly furious, and security personnel were trying to figure out how to handle the situation without causing an international incident. But Zara gently squeezed Emma's hand and said, "I would like that very much. Emma, thank you for being so kind to me." As the adults sorted out the situation and Emma was reluctantly led away, Zara sat in stunned silence. A tear rolled down her violet cheek, the first tear Marcus had ever seen from a Cathara. "She called me pretty," Zara whispered. "She wanted to be my friend. She looked at me like I was something wonderful instead of something wrong." Marcus felt his own eyes growing moist. "That's because she's right. You are wonderful, Zara. And if your people can't see that, then the problem isn't with you, it's with them." For the first time in her life, Zara began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, being small didn't mean being worthless. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen realized he was falling in love with someone from another world. 3 months had passed since first contact, and the diplomatic mission that was supposed to last only 2 weeks had been extended indefinitely. The Cathara had established a temporary embassy in Geneva, and formal negotiations between the two species were proceeding slowly but steadily. What no one had expected was for the smallest member of the delegation to become the most important bridge between the two worlds. Zara had become indispensable to the cultural exchange program, not just as a translator but as someone who genuinely understood both species. Her insights into human behavior had proven invaluable, and her ability to explain Cathara customs in ways humans could appreciate had made her the unofficial ambassador of mutual understanding. More importantly, her friendship with Marcus had blossomed into something neither of them had anticipated. They met every day now, usually in the small cafe near the university where Marcus worked. It had become their unofficial office, where they collaborated on translation protocols and cultural analysis reports. But their conversations had long since moved beyond professional necessity into something much more personal and meaningful. "Your homework assignment was supposed to be simple observations about human recreational activities," Marcus said, laughing as he read through Zara's latest report. "Not a 15-page analysis of the sociological implications of competitive sports." Zara's violet skin deepened with embarrassment. "I may have gotten carried away, but watching humans engage in athletic competition is fascinating from an anthropological perspective. The way your species can simultaneously display tribal loyalty and individual excellence is remarkable." "You watched one basketball game," Marcus pointed out, still grinning. "I watched 17 basketball games, 12 soccer matches, and 8 baseball games," Zara corrected. "I also reviewed historical footage dating back 50 years to observe evolutionary patterns in playing styles and fan engagement." Marcus stared at her in amazement. "When did you have time to do all that?" "Cathara require significantly less sleep than humans," Zara admitted. "I've been enthusiastic about my research. The truth was that Zara had been using her extra waking hours to learn everything she could about humanity, but not for professional reasons. She was trying to understand Marcus's world because understanding his world felt like understanding him, and understanding him had become the most important thing in her life. She had never felt this way about anyone before. On Cathara Prime, relationships were arranged based on genetic compatibility and social standing. Emotional attachment was considered an inefficient complication to the logical process of mate selection. But with Marcus, everything felt different. His presence made her feel valuable, interesting, and even beautiful, emotions she had never experienced before. The problem was that she had no idea if he felt the same way. "Earth to Zara," Marcus said gently, waving his hand in front of her face. "You disappeared on me there for a minute." "Sorry," Zara said quickly. "I was just thinking." "About what?" Before she could answer, her communication device chimed with an incoming message from Commander Vex. Zara read it quickly, and Marcus watched her expression change from contentment to distress. "What's wrong?" he asked. "The commander wants to see me immediately," Zara said, standing up so quickly she nearly knocked over her chair. "She says there's been a development regarding my status." "Your status?" "My position with the mission," Zara explained, though her voice carried a note of fear that suggested she suspected something more serious. "I should go." Marcus watched her hurry away, worry gnawing at his stomach. Over the past 3 months, he had seen how the other Cathara treated Zara. Commander Vex barely tolerated her presence, and Lieutenant Khan seemed to take active pleasure in undermining her confidence whenever possible. If they were discussing her status, it probably wasn't good news. An hour later, Zara returned to the cafe, but she looked devastated. Her usually perfect posture had collapsed, and her violet skin had turned pale with shock. "What happened?" Marcus asked, immediately moving to sit beside her. "The mission is ending," Zara said quietly. "The Cathara Council has decided that humans are unsuitable for full diplomatic relations. We're being recalled." "What?" "But the negotiations were going well." "According to the Council, I've been compromised," Zara continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "They say my reports show excessive sympathy for human perspectives and insufficient loyalty to Cathara interests. They're questioning my objectivity and my value as a representative of our species." Marcus felt anger surge through him. "That's ridiculous. You've been the best thing about this entire cultural exchange. You're the reason both sides have been able to understand each other at all." "But that's exactly the problem," Zara said, tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. "I wasn't supposed to help humans understand us. I was supposed to help us understand how to better manage and control humans. The fact that I've developed personal attachments has been noted and reported." The way she said personal attachments made Marcus's heart skip a beat. "Zara," he said carefully, "what kind of personal attachments?" She looked up at him with those beautiful violet eyes, now filled with pain and uncertainty. "I think you know," she whispered. Marcus reached out and gently took her hand, the same gesture that had started their friendship months ago. "I was hoping I knew," he said softly. "But I wasn't sure if someone as amazing as you could ever feel that way about someone like me." "Someone like you?" Zara said with surprise. "Marcus, you're brilliant, kind, funny, and patient. You've spent months teaching me that being different doesn't mean being wrong, that being small doesn't mean being worthless. You've shown me what it feels like to be valued for who I am rather than dismissed for who I'm not." "And you've shown me what it means to see the world with fresh eyes," Marcus replied. "You've made me remember why I fell in love with science in the first place, because the universe is full of wonders we can't even imagine. And the most wonderful thing I've discovered is you." They sat in silence for a moment, holding hands across the small cafe table, both fully aware that they were crossing a line that neither of their species would approve of. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "I leave tomorrow," Zara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "The Council has ordered all Kythera personnel to return home immediately. Formal diplomatic relations are suspended indefinitely." "And us?" "There is no us," Zara said, though the words clearly caused her pain. "Kythera don't form emotional bonds with other species. It's considered a mental deficiency, possibly requiring medical intervention." Marcus felt his world collapsing. "So that's it? 3 months of friendship and you're just going to walk away because your people say you have to?" "I don't have a choice," Zara said, her voice rising with emotion. "I'm already considered a failure by every measure my society values. If I refuse to return, I'll be declaring myself a complete outcast. I'll have nowhere to go, no way to support myself, no identity beyond being the Kythera who betrayed her own kind." "You'll have me," Marcus said simply. The words hung in the air between them, carrying a weight of possibility and terror that neither had fully considered before. "Marcus," Zara said slowly, "you're talking about asking me to abandon my entire species, my whole world, everything I've ever known, to stay here with you." "Yes," Marcus said without hesitation. "That's exactly what I'm asking, because I love you, Zara. Not despite your size or your differences, but because of who you are. Brilliant, compassionate, curious, brave. You're the most remarkable person I've ever met, from any species." Zara stared at him in shock. On Kythera Prime, love was a logical decision based on practical considerations, but Marcus was offering her something she had never dared to dream of: unconditional acceptance and devotion simply because he cherished her existence. "But what if I'm too different?" she whispered. "What if humans come to see me the way my own people do, as something broken that needs to be fixed?" "Then they'll be wrong. Just like your people are wrong," Marcus said firmly. "Zara, humans have a long history of falling in love with people who are different from themselves. We don't love in spite of differences, we love because of them. Your size, your perspective, your unique way of seeing the world, these aren't flaws to be overlooked, they're gifts to be treasured." As if summoned by their conversation, little Emma appeared at their table with her parents in tow. The 6-year-old had become a regular fixture at the cafe whenever she spotted Zara through the window, much to her parents' embarrassment and Zara's delight. "Zara!" Emma exclaimed, climbing onto the chair beside her alien friend. "Why do you look sad? Did someone hurt your feelings?" "I have to go away, Emma," Zara explained gently. "Back to my home planet." "But why?" Emma asked with the direct simplicity that only children possess. "Don't you like it here? Don't you like us?" "I love it here," Zara admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I love you and Marcus, and all the wonderful things about your world, but sometimes loving something isn't enough to make it possible." Emma considered this with the serious expression she reserved for important grown-up problems. "My mom says that love is the most important thing in the universe," she announced. "She says that if you really love someone, you find a way to be together no matter what." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. But before he could say anything, Emma continued. "Besides," the little girl added matter-of-factly, "you can't leave. You're my first alien friend, and I haven't finished teaching you about Earth games yet. We still haven't played hide-and-seek, and I wanted to show you my collection of pretty rocks." Zara laughed despite her tears. "You make it sound very simple, Emma." "It is simple," Emma insisted. "If you love Marcus and he loves you, and if your family is being mean to you, then you should stay here and be part of our family instead. Right, Mom?" Emma's mother looked mortified at being dragged into an interstellar relationship crisis by her 6-year-old daughter, but she recovered gracefully. "Emma's right about one thing," she said kindly to Zara. "Love is what makes a family, not genetics or species. If you want to stay, there are people here who would welcome you." Marcus squeezed Zara's hand. "You wouldn't be alone," he said quietly. "You'd have me and Emma and everyone else who's come to care about you over these past months. You'd have a chance to build the life you want instead of the life others expect you to live." Zara looked around the small cafe that had become so important to her. She thought about the children who waved to her on the street, the students who attended her lectures about Cathara culture, the scientists who valued her insights, and the human who had taught her that love could be freely given without conditions or requirements. On Cathara Prime, she would always be too small, too different, too deficient to matter. But here, among humans, she had discovered something her own people had never understood, that being different could be beautiful, and that the size of one's heart mattered more than the size of one's body. "What if the Council sends ships to retrieve me?" she asked, still frightened but beginning to hope. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens," Marcus said. "Together." Zara took a deep breath, feeling something she had never experienced before, the terrifying and exhilarating sensation of choosing her own destiny. "I want to send a message to Commander Vex," she said quietly. "What kind of message?" "The kind that says I'm not broken, and I'm not going back to be fixed," Zara replied with growing strength in her voice. "I'm staying here, with the people who love me exactly as I am." 1 year later, Dr. Zara Chen, she had taken Marcus's surname in the human tradition, stood before the United Nations General Assembly, delivering her annual report on human-Cathara relations. At 4 feet tall, she was still the smallest person in the room, but no one who heard her speak could doubt her authority, intelligence, or importance. The Cathara Council had eventually accepted that they had lost one of their own to humanity, and had grudgingly resumed limited diplomatic relations, largely because Zara had proven to be the most effective cultural interpreter either species had ever produced. She had become the bridge between two worlds, not because of her size, but because of the enormous capacity of her heart. In the front row sat Marcus, wearing the proud smile of a man watching his wife change the universe one speech at a time. Beside him sat Emma, now 7 and still convinced that her alien best friend was secretly a princess. And scattered throughout the audience were dozens of other humans who had come to love and respect the small alien who had taught them all that the greatest things often come in the smallest packages. As Zara concluded her remarks about the importance of celebrating differences rather than fearing them, she looked out at the sea of faces, human faces that had learned to see her not as an inadequate Cathara, but as an extraordinary individual who had chosen love over fear, hope over resignation, and courage over conformity. For the first time in her life, Zara understood that she was exactly the right size for the life she had chosen to live.